46 billion US dollars. Wow, that's a huge number. Even though it comes in different formats, some are concessional aid, others are loans, and meanwhile there are also investments, but this is still a huge price tag. How much problem do you think these kind of huge cash will be able to help Pakistan to resolve when it comes to our economy and potential?
Well, I think much more than the $46 billion commitment worth of agreements. What is important for Pakistan that President Xi Jinping's visit has simply reinforced China's commitment towards Pakistan. The policy framework that President Xi Jinping has given to the country ever since he came to power, that is about corridors, economic corridors to connect Western China with the rest of the world, regions which are to the west of China. So as a whole, I think this is ending sort of Pakistan's international economic isolation that it has been in because of the security crisis since 2001 and 2.
A lot of this, in fact, among the 51 agreements and memorandum of understanding being signed by the two sides this time, about 30 of them are dealing with exactly, Mr. Gu, you mentioned the China-Pakistan economic corridor. But the question is, how will the money being spent? This is linking Kashgar from Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region in China to Gwadar in your country. How much problem will that solve? What kind of economic potential do you have in mind when you look at this plan?
Well, basically, there will be a lot of problems. For instance, Gwadar, which will be the starting point from Pakistan, is located on the Arabian Sea, but in the province of Balochistan, which has been facing some sort of Baloch nationalist insurgency. So security remains a big problem. However, this economic corridor, as the Chinese president has been underlining, is not just about the roads, but it's a whole concept of infrastructure development, and that means that all along the route there will be new service centers, new settlements, upgradation of existing towns. So as a whole, it's a holistic concept, and Pakistan is hoping to benefit from it as much as it can.
In China, Mr. Liu, this $46 billion is also a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
And therefore, the administration, of course, need to report to the people as to whether the money is wisely spent. So whether it is wisely or not, from your perspective, to what extent China needs this as a strategic partner of Pakistan, particularly looking at the potential?
Yeah. First of all, the construction of the economic corridor between Pakistan and China will be mainly carried out on the commercial viability. For that matter, both sides would have to join hands to identify the strategies to make sure those strategies would be understood and supported by the people across the border.
Right.
Secondly, they would have to make sure the projects would be economically viable. Thirdly, those projects, each of them would be mega projects, which would involve billions of dollars each. So that would have to be commercially viable, and it would have to, China and Pakistan would have to identify the relevant partners, not only from the two countries, but also from other countries who are interested, who are partners to this.
What can be done by the two sides to guarantee that the plan will be implemented and the money will be well spent?
The sheer sense of economic corridor will be taking decades to complete. So it's a long-term strategic project. It will involve billions and billions of US dollars. And that is why they have to be subject to very sound political, economic, social security foundations. First, politically, we have to make sure the political stability will be there. The sound economic base would have to be guaranteed. Technologically speaking, both sides would have to. China is ready to offer technological, support,
right.
but the Pakistani people would have to have the capability to accept and operate on the technology
Exactly.
they are given, and the social stability would have to be there, and security environment is on top of everything else.
Right.
Without security, nothing else would matter.
Right. Mr. Sedney, from Washington's perspective, of course, this is a region that's been frequented by terrorism, even with Washington's efforts against it. But when you look at this big price tag of cooperation between China and Pakistan, what do you make of it?
Well, first of all, I'd say that strategically speaking, the United States and China share a very strong interest in a stable and prosperous Pakistan that stops being a host for terrorism. And I think that's the strategic framework in which you should look at all of the efforts in this, in this country with Pakistan. But I think you've already raised a number of questions that are important to be answered. The United States, for example, had a major program from 2009 to 2012 where we planned to spend about $7.5 billion, but we only spent about half of that. So the gap between what's planned and what is actually spent can be very damaging to your strategic goals. The United States really failed in its strategic goals in that period of time. So yes, the $46 billion figure you're mentioning is very large, but as Mr. Liu has said, as you have said, the key is really, is the money spent, and is it spent wisely? Is it spent in ways that are economically productive for the Pakistani people and the Pakistani nation? And that is going to be a big challenge. The Gwadar port that you've mentioned several times, the Gwadar port is very isolated from the rest of Pakistan. There is no industrial hinterland. There are no supporting industries. The Gwadar port, which was built in many ways by Chinese loans in past decades, so far has failed to take off. So making the Gwadar port the terminus requires a big leap of faith.
All right.
There's an open question as to whether that will end up being a lot of spending with no result.
How can we see this evolvement of relations between these two countries and make sure it's going to function during the current stages of changes in the world? Mr. Gu, I need to have some strategic thoughts and insights from you. How much will this 46 billion and also the plans be able to help in that regard?
Well, I think it's a big opportunity that has arisen out of President Xi's visit. I mean, both countries had been working on these memoranda of understanding and the possible agreements, which are worth $46 billion. Now, on the one hand, China needs cheaper, shorter, cost-effective access to the Arabian Sea to develop its own western regions. On the other hand, Pakistan needs big investments, even half the size of $46 billion, to develop some of its regions, including the Gwadar port, which Chinese had identified for quite some time, probably with a view to develop it and provide the hinterlands also with the requisite industry. So it's a mutually needed economic adventure or venture that both countries seem determined to take forward, despite a lot of problems on the Pakistani side, capacity issues, professional lethargy, slow Pakistani responses, and of course the ongoing issues of insurgency or terrorism, particularly in Balochistan. And I think that's why President Xi also came with very specific messages to the Pakistanis. He came with a message of internal stability, national unity on projects of national importance, and he also underscored the need for consensus on development.
Right.
So I think if even half of it goes across into the minds of the Pakistani leadership, we are still hopeful that something will come out of these projects.